need to understand the challenges. And Dr. Jansen, I'll start with you on that. Last month, the public was bombarded with headlines. I'm sure that many of you saw it, headline after headline, saying the Social Security Board of Trustees released its annual report saying that if Congress does nothing to shore up Social Security's finances by 2035, people are going to see a 17% cut in benefits. So let me give you the numbers on that. That means if you're receiving $1,500 a month in benefits and you see a 17% cut, you're going to wind up getting something like $1,245. So that's a significant cut. All right, so that has to do with Social Security's trust fund. That's what we're talking about here. Why has that been depleted?
Right, so Social Security is a pay-as-you-go system, and we collect a payroll tax, the Social Security tax, and we mostly take that revenue and send it off to beneficiaries. But when we collect extra payroll taxes, we put it in the trust fund. And the trust fund is like you can think of it as a savings account. So it accumulates some savings, and when there's times when Social Security benefits take up or cost more than the collected tax revenue, then the trust fund gets drained. We're unfortunately, I guess, in a situation where for the foreseeable future, tax collections from the Social Security payroll tax are insufficient to pay beneficiaries. And so we're drawing down the trust fund, and we're going to continue to draw down the trust fund, and we can see that until about 2034 or 2035, at which point the trust fund hits zero, and under current law, Social Security can only pay benefits equal to what's available from the incoming payroll taxes. There's no trust fund to draw on, and that's the cut that you talked about.
Right, but a majority of money that we get is from current workers.
That's correct.
Who are paying into the program. It's a pay-as-you-go.
Right, this is the pay-as-you-go system. Okay,
so we're going to stay on the same topic, Ms. Bono. Your organization, Every Texan, which I recommend everybody look up because you guys do great work, it focuses on advancing equity for all Texans when it comes to financial security, education, healthcare, jobs. You see the need that a lot of families in our state have. Could you talk about that need and also how Social Security helps them?
Absolutely, thank you for that. Every Texan works directly with organizations like the AARP and smaller community groups like Grandparents Raising Grandchildren to help support public education efforts and advocacy at both the federal level and the statewide level. We also work directly with enrollers, folks who help populations like the senior population access benefits that they need to help them thrive. And I think when we're talking about programs like Social Security, we have to think about it in a broader context than just that program alone. Dr. Saenz is absolutely right. It's a numbers game, but it's also a systems game. And the seniors in Texas, especially seniors on a fixed income, are really facing a complicated web of economic challenges right now. From the seniors that we work with, the top of the list is rising housing costs. I think everyone in this room has experienced the dramatic increase in property taxes and also the cost of rent. Texas has been impacted especially hard by that growth. And so according to a study from the Harvard Joint Center on Housing Studies last year, about 30% of seniors in Texas are cost burdened, meaning they spend more than 30% of their income on housing. And we see a similar trend when it comes to health care costs. About 60% of seniors in Texas do not have even $500 saved for emergency medical expenses. Food security is another big one. It's the one we hear about a lot. 10% of seniors on fixed incomes in Texas are food insecure. They do not have regular access to nutritious food, and that's above the national average, and it's slowly increasing over time. And so when we think about programs like Social Security that are supposed to provide stability for our aging population, we know that that demographic is going to be growing exponentially over time. We really need to think about comprehensive solutions to make sure that this population is properly supported in our state.
People who are poor and people of color are going to be are going to bear the brunt of that cut. And as I've indicated, you have the poverty rates already 125% or lower, where about more than 1 out of every 5 persons of color, Latino, African American, American Indian, Alaska Native. We're talking about 1 out of every 5 individuals being in poverty compared to about 10% for the white population. And then among women, women in particular have higher poverty rates as well. With women, it's more than 1 out of every 4 compared to about 13% of white women. So it's really that the racial categories of people of color and women as well. And these are individuals also that do not have other sources like investments, for example, they're less likely to have investment returns, less likely to have 401ks, IRAs, and so forth that they could possibly help alleviate the situation. So those are the big issues. And then you also have, in terms of, for these individuals, it would also be tapping into the resources of assistance from other family members who themselves are also, in many cases, also dealing with economic kind of issues as well.
Dr. Jansen, you've written extensively about this. You have urged Congress to act quickly to keep Social Security solvent. I don't think they got the memo. Now, on that topic, people have proposed a few things. One of them is raising the retirement age. People don't like that. Or lifting the cap on the payroll tax, which would make the highest earners pay more. The current payroll tax is capped at $168,600. So that would mean someone making $200,000 would presumably pay more on their taxes. Which of these solutions makes sense?
All right. So to keep, we're going to have to raise revenue, which means raising taxes. And I think pretty much we must face the fact that we're going to have some benefit cuts. I mean, if we just cut benefits, it's almost a 20% cut to make Social Security solvent. That sounds ridiculous. If it's just raising taxes, we're going to raise taxes by about 25%. One other thing I think we should keep in mind, I teach a class on pension economics, and I talk to a bunch of college-age students, and they talk about pensions, and we talk about fixing the problem by cutting benefits or raising taxes. And those students know that raising taxes means raising their taxes. They don't really think about the fact that when we say cutting benefits, we're probably saying cutting their benefits, because we're not going to cut the benefits of current retirees, because people think that's ridiculous, and it is. You can't hardly change your economic situation when you're 70 years old and you've been retired for 5 years, right? So there's a lot of constraints on the different issues. I think one way to think about solving this problem or addressing this problem is to think that A, we'd like a solution that really fixes the problem, at least for the next 75 years or so. Let's have a solution that we think will fix the problem, so we don't have this meeting every couple years like we've been doing. Maybe we'd like to fix the problem by making treating generations somehow, not equally, of course, because we're going to have to treat retired people differently, but having some intergenerational burden sharing. And finally, I think we have to protect the most vulnerable parts of the population. And so one set of solutions that does some of that, or actually could do all of it, is to index the retirement age. We have increasing longevity, and we've raised the retirement age from 65 to 67. And nobody likes working when you're 65, and nobody likes working when you're 67. And that's what your grandkids are going to be doing if we don't change the law. And I'm proposing we change it and index it to longevity, so your grandkids are going to work more than to age 67. I also think we should raise the taxable max. The taxable max is at a pretty high level, but it only covers 83% of payroll earnings, according to Social Security. Back in 1983, the taxable max covered 90%. And so we could raise the taxable max to maybe cover 90% of all payroll earnings, right? So you're still exempting the NBA players and stuff after they get to 200,000, but you're raising the taxable max, and that would generate a fair amount of revenue. We could also adjust the benefit formula. So Social Security's, it's got a flat payroll tax, but a highly progressive benefit payout. And so there's these, it's a little complicated, but basically Social Security figures your primary insurance amount. It's a dollar figure, and your monthly payments are based on your primary insurance amount. And there's ranges. And so for the first range, they call it a bend point, but for the first range from 0 to X, you get 90% of your primary insurance amount in your Social Security benefit each month. I mean, well, you get 1/12 of it. And then over the next range, you get 30%. And over the final range, you get 15%. And so one proposal is to don't change that 90% at the bottom, but that top 15%, add another category and change the 15% to 10, and add a category at the, half of that for you pay out 10%, and the last half you pay out 5%. So you're reducing the payments to high income individuals. Be informed, talk to other people that aren't here today. You have to, we mentioned earlier that you'd like a broad movement that brings some sort of pressure on our elected officials. That movement has to start with you, I guess, and us. And so talk to people you know about this. Make it a part of conversation. Don't let it be hidden. Don't let those young people think they don't know what Social Security is.
Ms. Bono, you understand what it takes to get people together to advocate. You're in Austin, right? Just sort of a mini version of DC in some ways. So again, I'll ask you that question. What do you think it is, what would you advise people here to do, and people who are watching, to keep this program solvent?
Narratives are so important, and raising personal and family narratives to help improve the understanding of lawmakers that the struggles that Texas families are facing and older Texans are facing. We, at Every Texan, we really like to bring the communities who are most impacted into the Capitol, to Austin, to tell their stories, because we think that's way more than compelling than spitting out numbers and statistics like I've been doing mostly today. We worked with a group of grandparent caregivers, grandparents raising grandchildren last year. We helped train them in advocacy. They went to the Capitol, they met with lawmakers, and lo and behold, a bill that was stuck to create better access to SNAP benefits, all of a sudden the next day moved. I don't think that was a coincidence, because let's face it, it's hard to say no to grandparents. And so I think there's real power in that. everytexan.org. Sign up for our listserv. We have action alerts, and we send out requests for those narratives during session, which is coming up next year. Would love to think about how to partner with you personally, but also with local groups who are really in the trenches at the local level.
Dr. Steins, what's the one thing that most of us do have in common? You study sociology, you study demographics. What's the one thing that can pull us all together where we can say, all right, I don't care if you're a Republican, I don't care if you're a Democrat, an independent, this is something that we can all work towards?
Yeah, I think what we saw it, I think, with a pandemic, that it was very much of a reminder, very literal reminder that we were all in this together. The extent to which we were trying to not only protect ourselves, but also protect those that we were coming into contact with. And when the vaccination, although we know that there was a lot of politics involved as well, but it was part of that protecting myself to also protect others as well. And I think that here the commonality is that we're talking about individuals across the board, across a political spectrum, that are beneficiaries of Social Security, or will become in the coming years, across the political divide, the political spectrum, across racial, ethnic groups, across gender groups, sexuality groups, and so forth. So there is that commonality that is an issue that cuts across different groups, and I think that the message and the interaction also with youth is also very important. And I think that in many respects, there are certain youth that know issues having to do with Social Security, knowing their grandparents, the struggles that they go through, and so forth, in a close-up fashion. And then what we can do, I think, is, as my colleagues here have indicated, given a number of suggestions, but one is also to hold politicians accountable as well, making sure that they know what your issues, and if they're not going to
Call them.
yeah, if